Hello, my name is Thomas. Welcome to British Culture. Albion never dies. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined in this episode by Kyle Barbeau. You may know him through his Instagram account, Easy Smiles and Expensive Watches, which if you know your Bond, you'll know comes from a line from Casino Royale. So we talk about his love of this film, the Bond franchise, and beyond. I hope you enjoy this podcast episode. I certainly very much enjoyed having him on. Okay, Kyle Barbeau, Mr.
Yes,
Easy
sir.
Smiles and Expensive Watches.
It's
Welcome.
nice to see you.
And good to see you. It was lovely. We met a little while ago, right, at the O2 concert in London.
That's correct. We had a very fun weekend in each other's company. That was nice. It was nice to finally, get beyond the computer screen.
Absolutely. So we've been messaging back and forth for some time. You had been giving some great suggestions, the alphabet of Britishness.
Thank you.
So
That's been fun.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you now on. For those who are unfamiliar with your work on Instagram, would you like to give a quick thumbnail sketch of who you are?
Sure. I'm just your average, everyday, run-of-the-mill, friendly neighborhood James Bond fan. My Instagram account, Easy Smiles and Expensive Watches, takes its name from a line in Casino Royale, which I believe we're going to talk about in a little bit. And it's just my own personal James Bond journey, things that capture my interest and are Bond adjacent. There's a watch element to it. There's a style element to it. Every once in a while, I'll extend my 2 cents about a film or a book review. But I'm really just there to have fun and make friends.
And it's lovely. It's a lovely account to follow. And obviously, you do gravitate towards Casino Royale.
I do like Casino Royale very much. It's easily my favorite Daniel Craig film.
Okay. And was that the first film that really got you into Bond?
Not the first one that got me into Bond. It's the one that I really got into Bond as an adult. When it came out, I was around 18 or 19 years old, so I had my own car and I could go and see it as many times as I wanted to. I wasn't reliant on somebody to take me to see this movie, so I was able to see it a bunch of times. And that's right also around the same time that James Bond Lifestyle and David Zaritsky and people like that were starting to get a little bit more active online. So there was more to see. Centered around Casino Royale. There was a lot more internet presence around that film.
Yeah, the growth of fandom on the internet is really, really interesting. And was this something shared by people around you? Were you like the one Bond fan in the group, or did you have a bunch of friends who were into it?
I was the biggest Bond fan in the group. I mean, most of the people that I went to school with all came to see Casino Royale, and we watched it multiple times. And when the DVD came out, we watched it a lot in our apartments. But nobody was as passionate about it as me.
Okay.
People were more than willing to come along for the ride, but nobody took it to the level that I had.
That's interesting. So what about the film really struck you?
What's unique about this one, more than any other that I've ever seen, it's the only time that someone of our generation was able to read the book first, the original Fleming novel first, before seeing the film on which it's based. So I really went in hoping, I hope they do this novel justice. And I'd read it a few times at that point, so I knew the story, and I was very curious about how they were going to adapt it for 2005, 2006, a post 9/11 world as opposed to the Cold War, and they did. They kept it true to the Fleming original. Act 2 of the film is pretty much verbatim the novel, but they also modernized it for the post 9/11 War on Terror. So it's a perfect synthesis of modern Bond storytelling and any Fleming novel.
And I'm interested, you'd already read the Fleming novels by this point.
Yes. And like I said, this was really the only time, and it will never happen again, that I was able to see a James Bond film based on an Ian Fleming novel after already having read the novel. That will never happen again.
Oh, that is interesting. Yeah. I'm just thinking back. So I think I'd seen the older films by that point, but I hadn't read the books when it first came out. I know it didn't make quite the same impact for me it made for a whole generation of
Mm,
fans, and perhaps this is the reason why.
that could be. I think that just my love of Fleming probably
Mm.
is why I like this film so much.
Oh, definitely. If I wasn't into Fleming, I probably wouldn't have got into the films so much.
Hmm.
Actually, for me, it went the other way around. I think I'd seen Casino Royale and it was a decent enough film, but then I saw in a bookshop, a secondhand bookshop, someone was selling a cheap copy of Casino Royale, and I thought, well, there was the big film, and everyone was talking about how Fleming it was. So I thought I'd read the book and check for myself. And actually, that's what really triggered me to be a bit more of a Bond fan than I was.
That's very interesting. I like
Yeah.
that.
And then you've recently seen it on the big screen, right?
I have. I was able to see it. It was the day after Thanksgiving, what we what's that word? Colloquially refer to as Black Friday.
Mhm.
The shopping day after American Thanksgiving. I flew up to Toronto and was able to catch it at this concert hall.
Oh, Canadian
Performed.
Thanksgiving is on a different day, so it wasn't for their Thanksgiving.
It was not Canadian Thanksgiving.
Oh, right, yeah.
It was U.S. Thanksgiving. So Canadian Thanksgiving, I believe, is in October. Ours is in November. But I flew up to Canada, and the film was presented in a concert hall on a big screen, a big movie screen, but with a live orchestra playing the score of the film to a live audience, which was
Wow.
a spectacular way to experience it. And I've seen this film in a lot of different ways, a lot of different times, and this was a really fun way to watch it.
Oh, that's incredible. Was there any special reason why they were showing it in Toronto?
I'm not quite sure why they've done this before. Just right before the COVID lockdown, I was up there to see Skyfall in concert, February of 2020, right before the world went crazy. So I'm not sure why. I think that this particular conductor just likes James Bond film scores.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. And that sounds like quite the experience. And I imagine it was a bit of a magnet for the Bond community.
Without a doubt. And I think if it had been on a different weekend, when Americans were not involved in, familial obligations, I think it would have been an even bigger one.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it was almost negatively affected by US Thanksgiving.
Yes, because I think people wanted to spend the holidays with their families. Go figure.
Oh, yes. Yes. Funny that. Well, they may have felt obliged rather than wanted to.
Yes, that's probably more accurate.
Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, you've been to a Bond meetup recently with me. You've been to one
Yes,
in Canada. You seem to have been to a few of these Bond events.
I try to make as many of them as I can. Like I said, the reason I do what I do, with social media and taking my hobby and my passion for these films and novels so public is to make friends and attend events and meet people and have a good time.
Yeah. And the Bond community, to use the loose term, it seems a very nice place. It's
It
very
is,
unusual.
especially in the film fan world. There are other film franchises. I know you and I both are Star Wars people. That fan community is not as gentle and as
Yeah,
accepting and as open-minded as ours is.
exactly. Once upon a time, the Star Wars community seemed a nice place. I don't know. I didn't particularly connect with it.
Mm.
But yeah, it seems to have taken a turn. Whereas the James Bond community, considering, we're fans of a man who kills for a living, gambles, smokes heavily in the books, doesn't necessarily have the most role model life, yet it seems to
But I
attract the
would counter
nicest
that a little
people.
bit. I would counter that a little bit because he's also a very patriotic man. He's a very duty bound man. He's motivated by his career. He takes his job very seriously. He sets very high standards of himself, both physically and professionally. So I think
Mm.
that those are things worth emulating. You have to cherry pick a little bit.
Absolutely.
Leave behind the alcoholism and pick up a little bit of patriotism.
Someone did message me after No Time to Die and ask, is James Bond alcoholic or is he just British?
The Venn diagram is there's a lot of overlap.
The Venn diagram is a perfect circle, is it? As you say, we pick the nice points from him. He's not a
Mhm.
perfect. He's not Obi-Wan Kenobi. You have to
Right.
cherry pick.
And I think that's part of the reason that I'm drawn to this character is because he's a human being.
Mm.
He's not imbued with any sort of superpowers. He wasn't bit by a radioactive spider. He's not from Krypton. He's from Kent. So I mean, you can relate to somebody like that.
Yes, he is very much a human, and I'd say almost especially the Fleming novels have him as more of a human being than perhaps especially some of the older films. Funnily enough,
Yes, I would agree.
and he does change generationally as well. Like every generation now seems to have their bond.
Oh, without a doubt. And I think for people of our generation, we kind of lean towards Pierce Brosnan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I have to say that was my main takeaway when I saw Casino Royale. I just thought, oh, there's no Bronson,
Mm.
Brosnan, sorry. Um, yeah, I to a certain extent, I still have that when I watch it. And I just think, ooh, how would this have been different with Pierce Brosnan in that role? If he could just do one more.
I think it would have worked. They would have had to frame the story a little bit differently, and instead of being, Bond begins, it
Mm,
would have been sort of James Bond's last
yeah,
great mission of his career. I think they would have just told a different story. But in 2005, Batman Begins was the smash hit action film. So I think that the Bond franchise doing what it does and following a lot of those trends wanted to capitalize on that momentum.
yeah. I think following from the Never Say Never Again thing of, oh, but he's getting too old and that kind of thing might not have been
Right.
quite so in the forefront of their minds.
I would have enjoyed it. Another Brosnan film is certainly on my wish list if I ever find the genie.
I'd love to see it. Of course, in these days of deep fake, maybe one day we will.
Could happen. That's true. Yeah, they brought Michael Keaton back, so
They
they could
did.
do it with Pierce Brosnan.
Yes. I'm very interested that when you first saw it in the cinema, you just had your first car. And this film probably has the most affordable James Bond car. Is it the Ford
Yes,
Focus?
yes, which is not too dissimilar from the cars that my friends were driving in those days. We were young, buying secondhand,
Mm.
inexpensive vehicles from family members or
Yeah.
from friends and things. So that was a little bit more relatable than the Aston Martin that he drives later in the movie.
I remember seeing that scene, and it is a very impactful scene, right? He arrives on the private jet, he gets his hard car, it's a little Ford Focus. He's zooming on this high technology of what Google Maps.
Yes.
Um, I just thought, I bet all the young lads will be out on that now.
If you take out the private plane, that's something that I would do all the time. Like
Yeah,
land, rent a really inexpensive car, and follow the Google Maps to the hotel. I mean that's just an experience everybody has.
absolutely. It's brilliant. I'm wondering, so you've seen Casino Royale on the big screen. Have you seen any other, maybe some of the classic Bond films on the big screen?
I have a few times actually. Right after Roger Moore died, I was able to see a double feature of The Spy Who Loved Me and For Your Eyes Only, and
Oh,
that was a good double bill. Just this past weekend, I saw a friend of mine actually put on From Russia with Love and Octopussy for their respective anniversaries,
huh.
60th anniversary and 40th anniversary for those films. And after Sean Connery died, I was able to see Goldfinger on the big screen. And Doctor No is one I've seen probably 4 or 5 times now because
Oh,
every
wow.
major anniversary of Bond, that seems to be one that they screen over here in the U.S. I've probably seen Doctor No on the big screen 3 or 4 times now.
Oh, that's interesting. And how do you find it's different seeing them on the big screen compared to, how we usually watch it, Blu-ray, DVD?
I've noticed that I've picked up on small details that I don't see when I'm watching it on a regular television at home.
Mm.
Little side characters and extras, maybe signs off in the distance, facial expressions that I never picked up on before. I had never seen there's a young child in the airport in the beginning of From Russia with Love. I had never noticed before.
Ah, yeah.
Just little things like that I was able to pick up on by seeing it on a much larger scale than just my television at home.
Oh, fair enough. I saw last year The Spy Who Loved Me on a big screen, and that did change it for me because, it's one of the films that really does just throw away Fleming because they had nothing left. And it
Correct.
really is designed as a cinematic spectacular.
Hmm. I think that is the quintessential James Bond movie. If you look up James Bond movie in the dictionary, Spy Who Loved Me is a prime example of what the whole thing's all about. That's the formula movie.
I remember being confused as a child because I think they're all broadcast on TV, and they broadcast that one fairly close to You Only Live Twice, and they seemed kind of slightly uncanny to me in terms of the similarity.
Go figure. Fancy that.
I mean, I know
Lewis
it's
Gilbert
formulaic.
made the same film 3 times.
He did. I must admit, The Spy Who Loved Me is my preferred.
Yes, I agree. I think that's the best of his trilogy.
And then I saw, From Russia with Love in the cinema. The nice thing for me was watching it with a group of fellow fans. Right, normally I just watch it by myself.
That's what makes some of these I'll call them re-screenings or re-releases so special, because when you watch them with the group that's there specifically to see that film, they're engaged in that movie. They want to be there. So the reaction, the crowd energy makes the experience all that more special. It enhances it quite a bit.
Yeah. So I watched it with a group of people here in Yorkshire, and for me, what I pick up on is the Turkish language, right? The way it's spoken throughout the film. So obviously the Turkish characters have perfect Turkish in the film. Sean Connery, he's just arrived. Of course, he makes mistakes, so he's just trying to copy somebody else, and he copies it wrong, which for me is believable. The Daniela Bianchi character just gets a few little details wrong. She's able to communicate a bit more than Connery, but she does get little slips in. And
That's interesting.
Really real.
Yes, because that is how a foreign character would behave in such a situation.
Absolutely. So she's supposed to be Russian. She translates from English. She's in Turkey, so she's got a lot going on. So she's capable, but not perfect, which I quite like.
And that gets back to the humanity of these characters.
Absolutely. If you could put on a film showing of any of these, which one would you put on?
Oh, that is a very good question. The one that I would like to see, I think, most of all, is On Her Majesty's Secret Service. I find that to be such a lush, beautifully shot, vibrant, colorful film, and I haven't seen that on the big screen yet. And I think that one would look really, really good. I think You Only Live Twice is another one that would look really, really good on a big screen, because that's such a large, super high, big scale picture. The world's largest film set at the time. Some of those landscape shots that Gilbert gives us of Japan, I think, would look amazing on a big screen. So there's my double
the lineup of the villains in You Only Live Twice, because you have Burt Kwok. Hang on, you were just working for Goldfinger. Do you just go around working for all of them?
He's just a henchman for hire.
Yeah.
He's on the 1-800 Spectre HR payroll.
But it is a spectacular. It is spectacular. Oh, it's wonderful. And we're talking about the uniqueness of the Bond franchise. When I lived in Turkish Cyprus, they showed classic TV, including the 1960s Mission Impossible movies and things like that. Are there any other franchises that your love of Bond would kind of translate into?
Other spy franchises or just film franchises in general?
However it moves for you.
Bond, I think people who are attracted to the Bond films like a lot of the same other films. We all generally really like the Indiana Jones films. We all generally like the Mission Impossible films. Some like Star Trek, some like Star Wars. The Christopher Reeve Superman films are very popular among Bond fans. So it's kind of like, if you like this one particular storytelling method, you may also like this.
Yeah. I mean, for example, for me, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and that most naturally overlaps with Lord of the Rings. I can almost guarantee,
I can
9
see
out of
that.
10 Star Wars fans would go for Lord of the Rings. The overlap between Star Wars and Star Trek, not that much. It just isn't.
Right.
I wouldn't say there's a huge rivalry of anyone I know. It's just disinterest.
They're just very different ways of telling stories.
Yeah, I think Star Trek tends to have a very optimistic view of the future, that we're going to get better and better and better.
Whereas Star Wars is like, yeah, nothing's going to change.
Everything is bleak, and the word war is in the title right there.
Yeah. I remember Lucas was asked about Star Wars Episode 1 about the Chancellor being mired in allegations of corruption and so on, and he was asked if it was supposed to be Bill Clinton. He was like, I conceived this in the 70s. It was kind of based on ancient Rome, so if you're finding it relatable, it just tells you people haven't changed much.
History is cyclical. That's one thing we learn.
So what would be your second franchise or your third franchise?
My second franchise would be Indiana Jones. I've been a huge fan since very early childhood. In fact, those films were what I saw before James Bond. There just isn't as much to that world as there is to Bond. There's just not as much content, not as many films. But that's how I found out who Sean Connery was, and that there was this other thing, this adjacent thing that he starred in, and it was a similar type of adventure, and that sort of led into becoming aware of who James Bond was through Indiana Jones.
That's interesting. And if I was to think of Indiana Jones, when I do, which I enjoy, I tend to think of it as a very, very American franchise.
Yes.
And it was only when I was talking to a huge superfan, Matt Wacker, who came on the podcast a while ago, said, no, it's very British inspired, because it was Spielberg's version of Bond. I genuinely never thought of this.
It's true. I think that there is certainly some Bond DNA. There's more than a little Bond DNA in Indiana Jones, and I do think it's Spielberg saying, well, I can do this too. I can create my own world.
So there may be some interruption because there is a heavy storm raging around me. Hopefully what you
Stay
said
safe.
Is being recorded. Thank you. I've battened down the hatches.
Good. Do you have a shovel handy?
I'm just not going out in the morning if it's that bad.
Fair enough.
So yeah, you were saying that was Spielberg saying, I can do this too.
Yes, I can do this with my own character and give a little bit of his own personal style.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I know that Harrison Ford was very against in the Temple of Doom, where you see him in the ivory tuxedo. He said, hang on, he's already got a double life of adventurer and college professor. And now you're giving him this third life?
Of a almost a Rick Blaine type of character in that scene. But it's clear that it's inspired by the Goldfinger tuxedo.
Yeah. And in the club, Obi-Wan.
There's no two ways. That's right. In the club, Obi-Wan. There's a lot of shared DNA between those two franchises. I mean, a lot of the same performers are in both Bond and Indiana Jones. A lot of Indiana Jones was filmed in England by the same crew. A lot of the same stunt performers. Vic Armstrong being a major player in both franchises. So there's some crossover. It makes sense why fans of one would be fans of the other.
Oh yes, absolutely. And I'm curious, are you unique in your family, if you don't mind me asking, in being interested in Bond and these franchises, or is this a shared love?
Nobody takes it as seriously as I do.
Okay.
I think my family tolerates it because they know I like these things, and they're supportive, and they'll watch James Bond movies with me, but nobody else in my family would put on a tuxedo and fly to Toronto the day after Thanksgiving to watch a movie that they've seen, countless times.
I hope they were forgiving that you did.
Yes. We had our dinner together, and then I was gone.
I'm sure. Yes, it is interesting how these things can be shared. So many people talk about their love of Bond, and often it's the number of times I've heard, I watched this with my father.
Mm-hmm. That's how I started to see most of the older films. I'm not sure if it still exists because who has cable these days? There was a cable station in the 90s, right around this time of year, 15 Days of 007. Oh. And that's how I saw a lot of the classic Sean Connery, Roger Moore, and Timothy Dalton movies. It was usually between Thanksgiving and Christmas in those weeks, and that's really when I got hooked. And that was also just as the promotion kicked in for Tomorrow Never Dies.
Mm.
And when Tomorrow Never Dies came out and my grandfather took me to see it, that was it. As soon as I saw that film, hooked. This is my thing now. This is the man that I want to emulate, the good parts. And I haven't looked back since.
I do like that film. There's a reason my Instagram is Fleming Never Dies. It is fantastic. I think that's another one I've never seen on the big screen. I remember when it came out, there was a huge
that was my
thing.
first.
Oh, wow. I think The World Is Not Enough was the first one I saw. Tomorrow Never Dies, the TV premiere was huge, and I enjoyed it so much. I was then taken to see the next one. So
excellent. Yeah, those 90s Brosnan films were good ones to hook young fans, people of our generation. The 90s was really the second golden age of James Bond.
I have a teenage relative, and I do wonder, gosh, what recent thing, what thing made in his lifetime would bring him into Bond? And I'm left a bit blank at that, to be honest.
It's true. I think maybe a new video game would be very, very, very helpful.
I absolutely agree. Now we're just heading in towards Christmas as the storm rages around me, and I'm wondering, we're coming up to Christmas. What Bond movie will you be binging on this Christmas?
Good question. I've been in the mood for the last week or so, maybe 2 weeks, for Your Eyes Only. I think maybe because the weather's turning cold and there's so many wonderful winter scenes in that film in Cortina. I think that might be the one I watched this Christmas.
I watched it just this weekend, and I got the Blu-ray, which I imagined wouldn't be much different from the DVD, and I was wrong. It has been tremendously cleaned up, perhaps more than any of the other films that I've seen. I feel I've seen some fairly degraded copies, but to see it in Blu-ray, it really felt fresh.
I would agree. I think that film gets the balance right between serious and comical.
Absolutely. And it's got my favorite line in all of Bond. You put your clothes on and I'll buy you an ice cream.
Nobody did it better.
Nobody did it better. Absolutely right. Kyle, thank you so much for giving me some of your time and for hopping on the podcast.
Thomas, it's always a pleasure. I'm sorry for the storm headed your way. Hopefully it didn't mess with your audio too much.
It's all right. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for listening to today's episode. If you want to find Kyle, do check him out on Instagram at Easy Smiles and Expensive Watches. Thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful week.